Hello, welcome to the Yellow Point podcast. I'm your host, Priklina, and I am so happy to be back. Thank you for your patience while we were experiencing a few technical difficulties. We, as in me, myself, and I, which is the team of the podcast for now. So, thank you for being here. Some of you guys might be curious about the name of the podcast, and maybe we'll talk about that eventually. But generally, yellow is a color that is related to the sun. And my intention with this podcast is that it reminds you of the warmth of the sun and that it feels like a sit in the sun on a cold winter morning, and that it makes you feel bright and joyful on the inside. But most importantly, I hope that the conversations that we have on this podcast will change your perspective for the better. And the best way that I can do that is to share my experiences with you guys, to eventually and hopefully have guests on the show that will also share their experiences with all of us, and that we can all learn and reflect and evolve together. I hope that through all the conversations that we have on this podcast, that it will not only entertain you, but that it will educate you and enlighten you in some way. I hope that just as the sun rises every single morning, you will be reminded that you have a chance to begin again and again and again. So that is my ultimate wish and intention with this platform. It has been such a long time coming, and I think one of the most difficult hurdles to pass is to start something, to create it, to begin. Because once you finally start and create something, you realize that you can build momentum, and from there, you can just keep going and going. If you listen to the first episode of this podcast, you'll realize that it is such an impromptu episode, and I didn't plan to start the podcast at that time, but I'm grateful that I did, because I stalled and stalled and stalled, and I thought about it for such a long time. And I'm grateful that I just did it, because here we are, and I don't have to think about creating it. I don't have to think about all the technical things and all of the excuses, really, that I gave myself to not start. So, yeah. Now, one of the things that really changed my life, and an experience that I would love to share with you guys today from back when I was in college, is when I decided to take part in the Human Rights Moot Court competition. For those of you guys who don't know what a moot court is, it's basically a mock trial, a fake trial, where law students are given a taste of what it will be like to be in court. And if you know me, you know that I'm more on the shy side, the quiet side, and public speaking was just something that terrified me. But all in all, I'm so grateful for that experience, because law school broke me out of my shell, so to speak. It made me uncomfortable in the best ways. And deciding to take part in the Human Rights Moot Court competition was almost the start of me deciding that, you know what, I don't want to be terrified when it comes to making a presentation, or when I have to speak in a public setting. I don't want to shrink myself. I don't want to be so shy anymore, because I think when it comes to anything that has to do with exposing ourselves in a public way, or when it comes to presenting ourselves publicly, we get into our heads so much and we judge ourselves, and we can be our toughest critic. And most of the times, the things that terrify us are not that difficult or it's not that we're incapable or unqualified of doing those things. It might just be unfamiliar. I read a tweet the other day that said, nothing is difficult or easy, it's just familiar or unfamiliar. So, anyway, back to the human rights moot court. Now, there was a certain lecturer, I don't want to mention his name, but if you know, you know, and he gave us human rights law. I sensed that he was the kind of lecturer that enjoyed challenging the students, and he didn't want us to be parrots. He didn't want us to be trained parrots. He wanted us to think as individuals and to even challenge ourselves. And I remember there was a time that I didn't even want to go to his class anymore. And if I did, I didn't want to sit in the front or anything like that, because you just never knew when he was going to ask you something, or how unprepared you might be in that moment. And now that I'm grown and more refined, I realize that that is honestly one of the best approaches to teaching students, is to train them to be independent thinkers and to be confident and comfortable in the ways that they express their thoughts and their ideas. Anyway, leading up to the competition, I took it so seriously. I even called one of my seniors and I asked him to teach me his ways. If you're listening, thank you. I was just so serious about it. I remember one of my teammates asked me, he said, "Why are you taking this so seriously? It's just a moot court competition." And I just brushed it off and I continued with my preparation. They also called a senior attorney from a law firm to give each one of us pointers on how to present our case in the best possible way and all of the things. And when we met her, all of us had to stand up, and it was in a lecture hall. So all of us had to stand up and introduce ourselves. So when it was my turn to introduce myself, I thought, I'm here. I'm going to speak as loudly as I can. She's going to hear me. It's going to be fantastic. By the time I was done introducing myself, she said, "Well, good, but you just have a slight problem with projecting your voice. So just work on that." And I was so defeated because I thought, here I am speaking at the top of my lungs and she still cannot hear me. How am I going to speak when it's actually time for the moot court competition? And how are the judges going to hear me? But luckily for me, there was a microphone at the competition, and I think it saved me a little bit, because if you're on the soft spoken side of things, you know what the deal is, you know what the struggle is. And if you're addressing a group of people, chances are that the person at the back is not going to hear you, and you're going to be asked to speak up and to project your voice, even though you might think that that is the loudest you can get. So, long story short, I ended up winning this competition, which honestly came as a surprise to me and probably to everybody else as well, because I was up against people that had actual public speaking experience, and it was not their first rodeo. Some of them had experience from high school, from taking part in debates, and they didn't shy away from taking on leadership roles and all of the things. Whereas for me, I was just a shy girl that was trying to break out of her shell and to challenge herself. And I'm so proud of myself because that experience taught me a number of things. First, it taught me that it doesn't matter if you think you're unqualified, but as long as you have the desire and the intention to learn and to improve on something, as long as you are not afraid to challenge yourself, as long as you're not afraid to look like a foolish beginner, as long as you're not afraid to be quote unquote embarrassed in front of a group of people, you can thrive and succeed in so many things. And I think that once we expose ourselves to situations that we would normally not expose ourselves to, we realize and we unlock parts of ourselves that we normally would not have known. Because imagine if I just decided to cruise through law school without challenging myself or without putting myself in situations that were so uncomfortable and foreign or unfamiliar to me. I would not have grown in any way. I would not have known that I am capable of public speaking. I am capable of presenting my thoughts or my ideas confidently to a group of people, whether known or unknown to me. So we learn things about ourselves and we discover gifts and abilities and talents that we otherwise would not have. So having the audacity to expose yourself to new experiences and to be willing to make yourself uncomfortable is so important. It might even be more important than having confidence in yourself. They say that the people that are thriving are not necessarily the people that are more capable or more talented, more creative, more intelligent than you. It's just that they have the audacity to try. They have the audacity to look like a fool, like a beginner, and they're not afraid to learn. They're not afraid to be seen trying. So that is really an important thing that I had to embody and practice. Another thing that this experience taught me was to bet on myself at all times, no matter what I'm doing, whether it's just expressing myself or working towards something or taking part in a competition. It's so important to bet on yourself and to believe in yourself, because it doesn't matter how experienced or talented or creative you might think your opponents are. What matters is that you focus on yourself. What matters is that you prepare yourself the best that you possibly can. Imagine if I took what my teammates said to me about the fact that I was taking it so seriously. Imagine if I decided to relax about it. Imagine if I convinced myself to not take it so seriously. The outcome probably would have been different. But I'm glad that I didn't listen. I'm glad that I took it seriously. I'm glad that it was that serious for me and that it was that deep for me and that I did the best that I could. And even though I didn't go into the competition with the thought or the desire to win, the fact that I ended up winning taught me that preparation is key and readiness is not something that comes to you magically. It's a decision that you make, because your mind is trained to protect you from things that are possibly going to be harmful. And embarrassing yourself publicly is something that can be harmful. So your mind is always going to try to protect you. And I would have tried to protect myself by not exposing myself to that experience or by not taking part in that mood court competition. But I'm grateful that I did, because I probably would not have started this podcast as well if I wanted to wait until I felt ready. I just had to make a decision to start, and I'm so happy that I started because I'm really enjoying this. My human rights moot court experience is one of my proudest moments in life, because it shaped me into a different woman, and it's just an experience that I love to share. And I hope that it will change something in you as well. I hope that it will change your perspective for the better. Thank you for listening. See you on the next episode.